The first $100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make. Not because the system is unfair, not because taxes are too high, not because your boss is incompetent. It's hard for one reason only. You don't have capital. And without capital, you are just a hamster on a wheel, running, sweating, getting nowhere. People love to fantasize about compound interest. They look at beautiful charts, 10% per year, lines going up and to the right. They imagine millions. But they forget one inconvenient truth. Compound interest is useless if you have nothing to compound. That's the cruel joke. Everyone wants the snowball. No one wants to push it uphill. When Charlie Munger was young, he wasn't dreaming about billions. He was trying to figure out how to scrape together his first few $1,000s. Rent, kids, divorce. Life hits all at once. Nobody hands you a cushion. You think rich people are playing the same game you are? They're not. They already have chips on the table. You're still trying to buy a seat. That's why the first $100,000 feels so miserable. You're working with muscle, not money. Every dollar is sweat. Every step feels uphill. You save $2,000, your car breaks down. You save $5,000, your kid needs braces. The world constantly reminds you that being poor is expensive. But here's the paradox. The moment you cross that invisible line, $100,000, something changes. Money starts pulling its own weight. 10% suddenly matters. $10,000 on $100,000 is not the same as $200 on $2,000. Charlie Munger called this the most important financial milestone of your life, and he wasn't exaggerating. You can be broke with intelligence, broke with ambition, broke with charm. None of it matters until you have base capital. This is not about being smart. It's about being stubborn. The first 100,000 can take years. The second 100,000 takes half the time. By the time you reach 500,000, you look back at the effort of the first 100 and almost laugh. Almost. If you still have the stomach for it. Yes, it's miserable, but you have to do it. No one compounds zero. People romanticize hard work. They believe if they work long enough, the universe will reward them. That's nonsense. If hard work alone made people rich, coal miners would be billionaires. Here's the brutal reality. Wages have ceilings. Effort is not scalable. Time does not compound. You can work yourself to death and still have nothing when the paycheck stops. Charlie saw this early. He watched people work harder than him every single day. Factory workers, construction workers, double shifts. Many were smarter than him. They stayed broke because their sweat evaporated the moment it hit the ground. They never built capital. Capital doesn't get tired. Capital doesn't need weekends. Capital doesn't come home drunk. It just sits there, quietly multiplying, as long as you don't sabotage it. This is the division nobody wants to admit. Until money works for you, you are a beast of burden. And if you think raises, promotions, or job hopping will make you rich, you are already on the losing side of the board. You get a raise, inflation steals it. You get a big salary, taxes rip it apart. You work 3 jobs, your body gives up first. Work can keep you alive. Work can pay rent. Work does not compound. That's why the first $100,000 is a war of attrition. You are escaping the labor trap. You are stacking the first pile of chips that can actually win your life. Once that pile exists, 10% is no longer rounding error. The market can pay you more while you sleep than your boss pays you in a week. I'm not saying stop working. I'm saying stop believing work alone is the ticket. The world is full of broke geniuses who never escape the salary treadmill. The only exit is capital. Hard-earned, accumulated, protected. Until then, your work isn't saving you. It's just exhausting you. And here's where most people quit. At the beginning, the numbers are insulting. You save $25,000 in a year. You invest it. If things go well, you earn maybe $2,500. $2,500. That's a broken air conditioner, a few dental bills, nothing life-changing. So people quit. They look at the tiny returns and think, what's the point? They'd rather spend the money on a new phone, a vacation, a financed car. At least they feel something. That's the trap. Small numbers feel meaningless, so people never let them grow into big ones. They strangle compounding before it has a chance. Charlie saw this pattern his entire life. People save, get bored, withdraw, spend, start again, quit again. They never understand that compounding only works if you let time do the heavy lifting. Nobody wants to wait. Nobody wants to live through the years where the returns don't impress anyone, not even themselves. But here's the irony. Those boring years are the toll you pay to reach the magic of compounding. You can't skip them. You can't hack them. Numbers don't double just because you're impatient. Charlie didn't see magic early either. His first investments barely moved. He had setbacks, bills, disasters that erased months of progress. It felt like running in place. But discipline, continuing anyway, that's where the game flips. One year you notice your capital earned as much as you saved. The next year it earns more than you saved. That's when people around you ask how you got so lucky. It wasn't luck. It was endurance. The trick isn't brilliance. The trick is not quitting when the numbers are small. If you can survive the psychological pain of watching money crawl instead of run, you eventually get to see it fly. Almost nobody survives that phase. They see a few $100s of return and decide it's not worth the trouble. That's why they stay poor. Small numbers test patience. Big numbers reward it. But you never see the second if you can't endure the first. One of the fastest ways to stay poor is increasing your lifestyle every time your income increases. Most people do exactly that. They get a raise. They buy a bigger car. Move to a nicer apartment. Book trips they couldn't afford last year. They call it rewarding themselves. Charlie called it shooting yourself in the foot. You don't need a PhD in finance to understand this. If you spend everything you earn, you never build capital. If you inflate your lifestyle, you never cross the first 100,000. It's arithmetic, not philosophy. Charlie watched lawyers, doctors, executives fall into this trap. Six-figure incomes, royal lifestyles, German cars, oversized houses, elite schools they could barely afford. From the outside, they looked successful. Inside, they were one paycheck from panic. And the worst part? They felt entitled. I worked hard. I deserve this. Sure. You also deserve to stay broke if that's how you think. Wealth is built on discipline, not indulgence. Charlie lived through the Great Depression. He saw men in fine suits with nothing in the bank. Appearances don't compound. Savings do. If you want the first 100,000, you cannot play the status game. Forget what your neighbors think. Forget what your coworkers drive. Forget impressing people you don't even like. The game is simple. Earn more than you spend. Save the difference. Invest it. Repeat. Long enough. Or ignore this and stay on the treadmill until you're old and bitter. People sabotage themselves because they confuse comfort with progress. They think living better means moving forward. It doesn't. Real progress is invisible. It's the balance growing that you don't touch. It's compounding you don't interrupt. The car loses value the moment it leaves the lot. The dinner disappears in 2 hours. The vacation becomes a memory next week. Capital works for you every day, awake, asleep, or dead. If you can't control your consumption, you will never have the discipline to invest. That's why most people never reach the first 100,000. Not because they can't earn, because they can't stop spending. Here's the difference between you and the rich. They have capital. You don't. Capital is leverage. It tilts the board in your favor. It doesn't complain. It doesn't get sick. It doesn't ask for alimony. It just compounds. $100,000 at 10% produces $10,000 a year. That's nearly $1,000 a month for doing nothing. Compare that to someone still grinding, saving a few $100s a month, sweating for scraps. The investor with capital collects while sleeping. That's leverage. When you have capital, the rules change. Banks return your calls. Opportunities come to you. You can take calculated risks without risking starvation. Charlie experienced this personally. When he had nothing, every mistake was dangerous. When he had capital, he could afford to be wrong. And he was wrong many times. The difference was recovery. That's leverage. Money is not just numbers in a bank account. It's freedom. A safety net. A key that opens doors that never open for paycheck-to-paycheck workers. You can buy assets when others panic. Hold when others sell. Start businesses without begging for loans. Leave bad bosses without fear. That's what $100,000 means. Not digits. Power. 10% on 100,000 won't make you rich. But it proves the game works. After that, everything compounds faster. Returns, confidence, risk tolerance. Before capital, you're a worker with dreams. After capital, you finally have a seat at the table. And that table is where money is made. You don't need brilliance to get rich. You need to avoid stupidity. Most people fail at that. They chase status with borrowed money, max out credit cards, finance cars, buy houses they can't afford, then act shocked when nothing is left. Debt is the opposite of compounding. Instead of money working for you, it works against you, relentlessly, silently, every single day. Charlie saw people with decent salaries ruin their lives because they couldn't stop making stupid financial decisions. Refinancing homes for toys. Carrying balances at 20% interest while bragging about 10% stock returns. That's not investing. That's self-deception. The cost of stupidity is invisible at first. You don't feel the chains until they're tight. And by then, you've wasted the years when compounding could have been on your side. Charlie watched brilliant people lose everything in 1973, in 1987, in 2000, in 2008. All for the same reason: leverage. Borrowing to chase returns. Debt doesn't care about your optimism. Avoiding stupidity means saying no to things that shine and rot. Easy credit, get-rich-quick schemes, Speculation disguised as investing. You don't need genius to avoid traps. You need discipline. The first 100,000 is hard enough without digging your own hole. Don't give compound interest to the bank. Earn it yourself. The game is simple. Spend less than you earn. Don't borrow for nonsense. Save and invest the difference. Continue. Simple does not mean easy. Human stupidity is powerful. That's why most people never reach the milestone. Not bad luck. Bad habits. And bad habits always charge interest. Everyone loves the idea of compounding. No one loves waiting. The first 100,000 is not built in a month. Not in a year. For most people, it takes a decade of grinding, saving, and not doing stupid things. That's why so few make it. They don't have the stomach for boredom. Discipline isn't glamorous. It looks like skipping dinners out, driving the old car longer, passing on trips you could technically afford. Those dollars are soldiers. They belong on the battlefield of compounding. Discipline is not heroic. It's doing the obvious, boring thing long enough to win. Charlie learned this young. While others chased status, he kept his head down and stacked capital. Was it fun? No. Was it exciting? No. But boring years are where wealth is forged. The trick is not breaking. Markets will fall. You'll feel foolish saving while stocks drop 30%. You'll want to sell. Quit. Convince yourself it was pointless. That's where discipline separates the rich from everyone else. Anyone can invest when markets are roaring. Anyone can save when optimism is high. But when everything turns to ashes, that's when you find out who has a spine. Charlie watched people with every advantage, brains, connections, high salaries, implode because they couldn't endure the grind. They needed excitement. They needed to feel smart. So they chased schemes, trends, or quit when it hurt. Discipline was beneath them. Discipline is what carries you across the line. Not intelligence. Not luck. Not hard work past a point. Just stubborn refusal to stop feeding the furnace while everyone else is distracted. You don't need to be brilliant. You need to be relentless. The market eventually rewards endurance. It always has. So if you want the first 100,000, forget brilliance. Forget shortcuts. Just endure. Endure the boredom. Endure setbacks. Endure years where it feels like nothing is happening. Because something is happening. Compounding only reveals itself after you earn the right to see it. There comes a moment that feels almost supernatural. The day your capital earns more than you do. Until then, you were pushing the stone uphill. Every dollar came from sacrifice. Then one year you look at the numbers. Your investments quietly produced 40,000, 80,000. That's the moment. Capital whispers, relax. I'll carry more of the load now. That whisper changes your psychology forever. You are no longer just a worker. You are a capitalist. Your money is employed. And unlike human employees, it never complains, never strikes, never takes sick days. It compounds, year after year. That's when the game flips. Saving feels less like sacrifice and more like feeding a machine that pays you back. Watching your balance grow becomes addictive. You want to contribute more, not less. That's also when outsiders call you lucky. They see the snowball. They didn't see the decade of pushing. Luck had nothing to do with it. Discipline did. When capital overtakes labor, the wealth curve steepens. 100 becomes 200. 200 becomes more. Eventually, compounding dwarfs any raise your boss could ever give. That's why the first 100,000 is everything. Without it, you never reach the inflection point. With it, the system tilts in your favor. But here's the warning. If you sabotage yourself after that point, with withdrawals, trends, or panic, you can still destroy everything. Capital does not forgive stupidity. Handled properly, it becomes your silent partner for life. That's the reward for enduring the long climb. One day you wake up and your money is doing more work than you ever could, and it never asks for a paycheck. Reaching 100,000 is not the finish line. It's the starting gun. Many people still blow it. The moment they get ahead, they think they're geniuses. They forget how long the climb was and sprint straight back into stupidity. Charlie saw this again and again. Someone hits 100,000 and decides they're the next Warren Buffett. They chase hot stocks, speculate with options, fall for whatever shiny nonsense is being sold that week. 10 years of discipline gone in one bad bet. Others reward progress. They hit the milestone and celebrate with a bigger mortgage, a nicer car, and trips that burn the capital that was supposed to make them free. They confuse a milestone with a finish line and cash out before compounding bites. Then there's leverage. People think borrowing is a shortcut. It's a time bomb. Charlie watched brilliant men get destroyed borrowing against portfolios convinced markets only go up. Then came crashes. The market always finds a way to humble the arrogant. Here's the cruel truth. Building the first 100,000 requires discipline. Keeping it requires humility. Growing it requires patience. Break any of the three and you go back to zero. And going back to zero after tasting progress is worse than never starting. Charlie saw people ruined by this. They preferred denial over admitting they wasted a decade. That's why he always said, avoid stupidity first, brilliance second. You don't need to be smart to stay rich. You need to not blow yourself up. The game doesn't get easier after the milestone. The risks just change shape. If you think the rules stop applying to you after 100,000, the market will enjoy correcting you. The climb to 100,000 is hell. Falling below it again is worse. Don't let arrogance push you off the edge you just crawled onto. The first 100,000 is miserable. It always has been. It always will be. But it's the misery you must endure. No one compounds zero. No one rescues you from bad habits. No one saves you if you insist on living beyond your means. This isn't about secret formulas, or gurus, or magic. It's discipline. Spend less than you earn. Save the difference. Invest. Repeat. Simple. Brutal. Relentless. If you can't do that, no one can help you. If you can, you unlock the only thing that separates the rich from everyone else. Capital that works harder than you ever could. People love to complicate money. Jargon, courses, noise. All to distract you from the ugly truth. You must endure years of boredom and restraint before compounding shows up to rescue you. Most people won't. That's why most people stay broke. But if you have the spine, discipline, and common sense to avoid stupidity, debt, envy, and lifestyle inflation, you get there. And when you do, the game changes forever. Your money works. Your risk tolerance expands. Opportunities open. You stop being a powerless worker begging for scraps. So here's the conclusion. Get your first 100,000 by any honest means necessary. Cut expenses. Increase income. Ignore what neighbors think. Just get there. Because until you do, you're not even in the game. And if you're not spending less than you earn, no one can help you. No one.